It's cool, isn't it?
Good evening. We are calling to order the regular meeting of the El Segundo City Council, Tuesday, January 16th. Happy New Year. This is our first meeting of the new year. Very exciting. If you would rise, Pastor Lee Carlisle from the United Methodist Church is going to give our invocation. And after that, Abigail Cabrera will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Carlisle.
Good evening. I invite you to join me in a moment of prayer. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this new year and for all the blessings that it brings to us this day and for this meeting and for all those who have worked hard to make it possible. It has already been a busy day for many of us here, and there's much to discuss, but we are enlivened by the enthusiasm of the young people in this room, and we are grateful for them. And we pray that indeed their enthusiasm will refresh our spirits and help us to move into this meeting with open minds and hearts and to listen and speak with patience and clarity. We especially pray for wisdom and guidance for Mayor Fuentes, for Mayor Pro Tem Boyles, and for Council Members Brand, Dugan, and Pertstuck. May the work that is done this night prove to be a blessing for our community and especially for these children. Amen.
I
have to have that all the way up. It'll
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, as Pastor Carlisle said, there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement in this room. We are going to take our presentations out of order. We are going to begin with the El Segundo Chamber of Commerce trophy presentation to the parade winners. And Marcia Hanson, the Executive Director of the El Segundo Chamber of Commerce, and Linda Johnson, committee member, are going to announce the names of the 2017 Holiday Parade winners.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. The holiday spirit is alive and well here in the City Council chambers tonight, right? The Chamber would first like to thank the city for all your help in putting on the 54th annual El Segundo Holiday Parade. Who would believe it's been going on for 54 years and better than ever. Thousands of people lined the street, and it was a fabulous day in downtown El Segundo. We want to thank our sponsors, of course, the city, Chevron, the LA Kings. Many of you saw Bailey there, which was very exciting. Consolidated Disposal. Someone's got to provide the porta potties. The Automobile Driving Museum for their fabulous cars, the Cadman Group, the Cambria Hotel, and Los Angeles World Airports for making this parade a reality this year. We want to get on right to the excitement because some of these kids have to go to bed. Anybody got to go to bed? No. Say, Jimmy Fallon's not even on yet. We want to start with our best performers' children because we have a lot of them here, and they were fabulous. They just made the whole place cheerful. The El Segundo Pop Warner, come on up for the best performers' children. Mayor, would you like to come down and hand awards? Or all the council members? That would be great. We're going to take out a wall here and a wall here so we have room.
I know, right? There's just too many girls.
That's great.
Okay, tall girls in the back. Tall ones in the back. Little ones in the front.
Everybody?
A little bit difficult.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
A little bit further back, a little bit further back. Oh my goodness gracious. All right. I can get this. This would be fantastic. Sure. Sure. Okay, guys. Everybody here? All right. Guys here. And one more, everybody. Beautiful. You guys are... Oh, wait, somebody snuck in there. Hold on, you. There we go. Thank you.
Wait, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Cheese.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just going to keep snapping until you're all in there. Dilene, you're out of the picture. God, I cannot. I'm going to fall backwards doing this. Okay. Oh my God. Thank you for indulging us. Girls? Wait. You're going to all lean around and tell them thank you. Turn around and say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Where's Mike? Mike? Thank you.
Thank you. That was like a fabulous paparazzi moment. Could you stay with us? We got some more folks coming up to meet y'all. Our next best performers adults, you saw them swinging down Main Street, Lindy by the Sea and Rusty Frank. I think Rusty's with us today.
I need to get a picture. Let's see who can take the picture.
I'll take it for you.
Can I say something just briefly?
Sure.
Okay. I just want to thank everybody. I teach adults, and I'm the only one here because they're all over in class right now. And they had such a great time. It was their first parade, and it was wonderful. So I want to thank everybody in El Segundo. You guys are great. Okay. Oh, wait, I got two. Come on, hurry up. Jamie's here. Where is he? He's here. Where is he? Jamie, get over here. Is he outside? He's in the lobby. Okay, here's our little mascot. You gotta hurry because they gotta. I know. Come.
Oh, no, you go first. All right, just a couple for me, guys. Here we go. One, two, beautiful. One more. Beautiful. Thank you, guys.
Dance lessons for all of you. There'll be Lindy hopping right down your way. Thank you, Rusty. The next award for Best Use of Theme, which was 100 years of El Segundo celebrating our centennial, was the Rotary Club of El Segundo with a giant birthday cake. There's almost as many of you as the cheerleaders.
All right, got everybody? Oh, you first. Okay, here we go, guys. Shots here. 1, 2, and. There we go. Thank you so much.
The next we have Best Holiday Spirit, Children's at St. Anthony's School. The mayor's alma mater.
Just a couple for me. Oh, okay. Here we go. We got everybody? All right, here we go. One. Big smiles, guys. Oh, beautiful smiles. Thank you so much. That was lovely.
Now that is what a holiday parade is all about. Look at those beautiful faces. Good job, guys. And Linda's alma mater. Look, good people coming out of there. Best Holiday Spirit Adult Community Civic El Segundo Women's Club.
Thanks. Thank you. I know I'm going to One day I'm just going to toss this thing. All right, we got everybody smiling faces. Maybe we can get somebody on this side. All right, I think we're gonna fit everybody in. How are we doing? Let's see here. All right. All right, guys. I think I got everybody. All right, here we go. And nice smiles. One more. There we go.
We have the best holiday spirit adult business commercial. There's a tie. The first one is 100 Got Junk, You Move Me, and How's It Way Today? Here comes Val.
I want to see blue afros and pyramids. We got to back up, though. Got to back up. And let's center ourselves a little bit. We got super tall guy here. We gotta get maybe moving guys over here. We're gonna need a pyramid. I'm not gonna see the councilman. Here we go. All right, I think I see everybody. Here we go. 1, 2, and one more. All right, thanks.
And they tied for the best holiday spirit adult business commercial with Swoop. Swoop.
All right, just a little bit in between right there, and then a little bit over there. There we go. All right, we want to see everybody's happy face. Here we go. 1, 2, and one more. Thank you so much.
That was Swoop's first year in the parade. Great job, guys. The award-winning Swoop. The best musical band elementary is the El Segundo Elementary Band.
You guys want to come up here? You guys first. Huh? Over here first. Awesome. One for me. Don't forget about me. Camera's gone to sleep. Here we go. And one more. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Keep playing those instruments. The best musical band middle school is Jane Addams Middle School Marching Band.
One, two, three. Okay, one more. Got it.
Okay,
All right.
Just a couple for me here, real quick.
Smile.
Okay, I see everybody. All right, you guys are looking fantastic. So one more. Thank you.
Congratulations. We have the best musical high school marching band, the El Segundo High School Band and Color Guard. The El Segundo High School Band and Color Guard. La La Land.
We're here. We play instruments.
I said it on behalf of. Need to back up a little bit more. There we go. We're all friends here. Here we go. And one, and one more. Yeah, thank you so much.
And we've been now for the Grand Marshals Award. We'd like to welcome in. They're going to start coming in. The Grand Marshals Award this year is the Dickens Carolers.
There we go. Could I ask council to step one more up, if it's okay, if you feel comfortable with that? There we go. One more up. There we go. There we go. Now we're going to get everybody. Okay, you first, sir? Oh, okay. Very good. All right. Here we go. Ooh, a minute now. Big group here. Here we go. 1, 2, and one more. You guys look so good. I want one more. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Now, before they leave, as we finish up the centennial year of El Segundo, it's been a fabulous 12 months, hasn't it? Have you all had a great time? Well, our fabulous Dickens Carolers has a very fabulous send-off for us. Ladies and gentlemen.
We wish you a happy birthday, we wish you a happy birthday, we wish you a happy birthday, dear El Segundo. Good tidings to you, El Segundo Herald. Good tidings for Christmas and a happy New Year. Now bring us a stuffed pizza, a hot or now Ringo. We'll stop off at Rocket Brews for a cup of good cheer. We won't go until we get some, we won't go until we get some, we won't go until we get some, so bring some right here. We wish you a happy birthday, we wish you a happy birthday, we wish you a happy birthday, dear El Segundo.
Great.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for all your participation in the El Segundo Holiday Parade. We'll see you next year for the 55th Annual El Segundo Holiday Parade. Thank you.
And thank you, El Segundo Chamber, for all your efforts to give us a spectacular Centennial Parade. And for our next presentation, Meredith Pettit, who's the Director of Recreation and Parks, is going to give us a Centennial Celebration Wrap Up and sponsor recognition. Meredith.
All right. Good evening. Thank you very much. This is exciting night. All the celebrations going on. We're 2 days away of the city's 101st birthday, so I think it's safe to say that we've had such a memorable year, and I've been honored and thrilled to work with so many people over the last year, and actually the last 2 years, to really put out some really great events. And celebrate throughout the entire year. So it's been really special for me, our staff who've been involved, and all of the volunteers and the sponsors. And I wanted to definitely take some time tonight to really recognize the collaboration that occurred over the last 2 years to make it all happen. So first and foremost, we do have a video El Segundo TV produced for us tonight, and that's going to basically take us through the year, show some video, and get us excited for the next presentation to recognize our sponsors. So without further ado, here's the video.
Centennial Ball.
Today, on this day 100 years ago, the Board of Trustees adopted a resolution to organize a volunteer fire department. We now participate in our ceremonial procession to our old fire station on Richmond Street.
As a part of the Cities Where Big Ideas Take Off campaign, El Segundo launched the 100 at 100 initiative. The goal was to welcome at least 100 new businesses to El Segundo by the 100th anniversary of our city. We're thrilled to announce we exceeded that goal, and 118 new businesses joined our community in time for our centennial.
We have a very long-term plan here because we're very happy and we're definitely here to stay. Hashtag El Segundo fans.
For the land of the free and the home of the
Over 100 years ago, one man had a vision to build a brand new refinery for Standard Oil. In just 5 months, his vision became a reality. But little did he know, the company town that sprung up would go on to change the world through culture, technology, and play. That town is called El Segundo.
Merry Christmas, everybody! Everyone having a good time? Everybody ready for Christmas?
So you can see that we had quite the year, a lot going on, a lot of people involved, and a lot of great sponsors. This presentation I'm going to run through just to make sure that we don't forget anybody, but I'm sure there are people, who we'll have to follow up with. But I wanted to first and foremost thank the Celebration Committee. The Centennial Celebration Committee was just absolutely remarkable to work with. I was looking back at my files, and the first meeting agenda was back in November of 2015. And tried to count all of the agendas, and there were over 30, and I stopped and said, okay, I think that proves my point, that all of these people really dedicated a lot of time to this project, particularly the community representatives, Barbara Briney, Jeff Kaysen, Lily Craig, Marcia Hansen, Al Kiahi, Scott Nickel, and Heidi Wong. And I also want to make sure to announce that many of these folks who we will be mentioning tonight are here in the room, and I want to make sure that we all get a picture together or somehow recognize and really thank them for the job that they've done. The elected officials sitting on the committee was Mayor Suzanne Fuentes, Councilmember Dr. Don Brand, and the City Clerk Tracy Weaver. And then the city staff was myself, Recreation Supervisor Sean Green and Ryan Delgado, our Recreation Specialist Rachel Cummings, Economic Development Manager Barbara Voss, Senior Librarian Julie Todd, and Captain Brian Ivansky. So it all started off with the logo, and I think everybody's come to love the logo. It was definitely a process that the committee went through many iterations to make sure that the logo was really representative of the city and of the 100 years of El Segundo. You can see there were many different versions that we used throughout the year. This logo was created by Joe Natoli at Boiling Point Creative Group, which is a local business. And he really worked very closely with the committee to make sure it was exactly what we were looking for. What this did was set the foundation for the branding for the entire year and for the celebration. And the committee really took their time to select different commemorative merchandise items to sell to commemorate the year and have little keepsakes for the community members. So our top sellers were the ornaments, Christmas ornaments, our mugs. We have t-shirts, sweatshirts, and I just want to make a plug that the committee has decided to discount all of we're having a liquidation sale, basically, and throughout the month of January will be 50% off. So come get the rest of the merchandise at the checkout building or online, and hopefully we can spread the joy even further into 2018. The Friends of the Library was really instrumental in this year as well, and they sponsored our history tent. They purchased a tent, put together all of the photographs, the historical photographs, and the captions that were hung. This was quite the project to take up and down many, many times, but also staff with the volunteers of the Friends of the Library. And so I want to make sure that we give a shout out to them. This was our pop-up museum, and it was at most of the Centennial events and all of the city events throughout the year as well. And we also had a special, a unique situation where our now retired library director, Deborah Brighton, was signing her book, Images of America, El Segundo. So that was really special as well this year. You all know the special events. The video showcased them all pretty well, but the ones to highlight were our brand new events, our Centennial Ball. We started off with, we did a birthday bash on the city's actual 100th birthday. The Centennial Committee sponsored that really special extra finale for 4th of July fireworks. We had the Centennial Carnival at Chevron Park, which was really mostly due to the donations by Chevron. Celebrate 100 Years of El Segundo, a fireworks spectacular, was something that will probably never happen again. Definitely one of a kind, unique, just creative program that you just can't duplicate. That's why I say that. And then the last one we recently had was Magic on Main Street over at Library Park. I wanted to also mention some of the community participation and other departments that really got involved as well. We had a lot of local groups participating in the different events through food sales or activity booths. Our El Segundo High School and the schools got involved with their choirs and their bands. You can see in the center, the police department had a special Centennial badge made. Both the fire departments, police departments had special patches this year. Our public works department got involved, the planning department. And so I just really wanted to recognize that it really was a community, really a collaboration, and just such great community spirit goes on. And we also had some oral histories or El Segundo Remembers programs on El Segundo TV with some of our longtime residents. So here we go into the sponsorship. I do have certificates for all of the groups. I know that quite a few of them are represented here tonight, but I'm just going to list them off for now. El Segundo Chamber, Automobile Driving Museum, Los Angeles World Airports, Grand Point Bank, Friends of the El Segundo Library, Pelucci Sailings and Martin, Rotary Club of El Segundo, Consolidated Trash Services, El Segundo Little League, The Jewelry Source, Cadman Group, Biz House, DeLuca Trattoria, El Segundo Girls Softball, Saga Architecture, Muni-Temps, El Segundo Unified School District, Banner Stationers, and Boiling Point Creative Group. So I want to give those community sponsors a round of applause. Next are our corporate sponsors. You saw their logos in the video, but just to recognize them once more, our milestone sponsors were at the $10,000 level. We had Los Angeles Lakers, Bill Ruane of Remax, NRG, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and Textile. Thank you to them. Next, we have our anniversary sponsor, which was Mattel, which was at the $15,000 level. Mattel also sponsored our holiday tree lighting with donating all of the 800 toys that were given away, and we did run out. And we also have a special presentation here coming up in a few minutes where we'll invite the designers of our commemorative Mattel toys, our Barbie and Hot Wheels, to come and recognize those folks as well. Our premier sponsor at the $25,000 level was Continental Development Corporation. I want to thank all of them. And then our last sponsor to recognize here tonight was our elite sponsor, $50,000 and a plus. Really, I think goes Lily Craig. The time and effort that she put into the Centennial Committee and representing Chevron was really, really remarkable. But they also helped in a lot of other ways. They were able to produce our commemorative program, which I have a box. I think I set it by the door. If anybody wants one, please grab some on the way out. We have the commemorative program. The carnival was something that Chevron, it was their idea, and they said, you know, we have this employee carnival that we have every year. How about we keep it an extra day and invite the community to come join? So things like that. Their graphic designer helped us out a lot in producing a lot of the materials and marketing materials. So I really want to make sure that Chevron gets the recognition that they deserve. So the last announcement tonight before I call up the designers from Mattel is the goal of this project and the committee was really to solicit funds to celebrate the centennial and to use those funds wisely. And I think that we've achieved that. The Centennial Committee has an announcement, and you'll hear more about it throughout this coming year. But what they've decided to do with any of the remaining funds after we pay all the bills and see what the balance is we've been working in collaboration with the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee and decided that the Centennial Committee will commission a piece of artwork that will represent El Segundo, its history, its future. We'll leave it up to the artist's interpretation of what that really means, and we'll go through a selection process which the City Council will be a part of, and the Centennial Committee will continue to be a part of, and make sure that it's something that's really permanent and that represents the community really well. And some of the locations that we've designated as options are really prominent downtown locations mostly within the 300 block of Main Street, so somewhere here on the Civic Center property or at least nearby, hopefully as an attraction for people to come visit El Segundo, maybe make a social media post about it, but as a destination art piece. And I think that the Centennial Committee is really excited to do that. And again, you'll be hearing more and more about that as we move through the process with Arts and Culture Commission. So I want to thank everybody who came out, enjoyed this year. Again, thank you to all the sponsors, all of the committee members, all of the volunteers, all of the community partners, and just really celebrate the end of the year. I'm sure the mayor has some comments that she wants to make, but I do want to do the Mattel presentation here, so I will call up our representatives here from Mattel, which is Corinne Marat. And the two designers, which we're very happy to have tonight, are Angel Kent and Tyler Charest.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, to our community. It's our honor to present to the city this evening, on behalf of Mattel, our employees who live, work, and play at our headquarters city here, to the city that we've called home for the last 26 years. This one-of-a-kind Barbie doll and one-of-a-kind two versions of a one-of-a-kind Hot Wheels that represent the city. We hope we will have much enjoyment, as much as the designers who've participated here have contributed to it. Hot Wheels as well as Barbie are two of our iconic brands, and we are delighted to make this presentation this evening. Quite a big honor. Congratulations to the city again. Thank you. And here's to the next 100 years for El Segundo.
Thank you. Well, we are so honored to have these beautiful pieces of art for our city. Thank you. We're going to take a photo with you. But I mentioned to Meredith, anybody who's here who would like to have their pictures taken with the designers, nobody gets an opportunity like that. These artists, they're so creative. So I would encourage everybody who wants to come have their picture taken with your art and you, please, to come up with this as soon as the council takes a photo with you. And then we'll do the other photos. So,
want to say a word?
Yeah, I'd also like to take a moment to express how important this project was for me. When it was handed down upon me, I felt very blessed, and I knew that I had to make justice to what they expected from me, and I was very inspired by the beautiful blue butterfly that is native to El Segundo. I thought it had a very unique personality, this beauty. It's kind of like fairy, and she lives next to the ocean, and I just found so many beautiful elements to it, and I try to put it in here, and I hope I did it justice, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
I'll just keep it simple and say thank you very much for the opportunity. These are beautiful. I hope you enjoy, and thank you for allowing us to work and play in your city.
Thank you. I really consider these our first pieces of art for our next 100 years. So we will take a photo with you.
Risk it all. It's worth it. It's worth it.
I would absolutely.
Yeah.
want to say a few words? Are we doing the photographs next, Meredith?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say a few words about the whole centennial year. It's been an extraordinary honor for me to be a centennial mayor here in my hometown. I'm so grateful to all the staff. We didn't give a big enough shout out to El Segundo TV. Dan O'Toole and his people were there, everything, Robert, Darnell, everybody. So you have documented our centennial celebration for the next generation. That's something we really didn't have for the past 100 years, but it will be wonderful for the next 100 years. And you went through the list of the committee members, but there were some really extraordinary people who volunteered above and beyond for events like the Centennial Ball. They set up the Automobile Driving Museum for 2 days. For the fireworks celebration, they put together all the little hors d'oeuvre trays, and those weren't done by elves, those were done by people here. And I want to thank Marcia Hansen, Tracy Weaver, Lily Craig, Barbara Briney, Barbara Voss, Heidi Wong. We had 2 extras. Naomi McIlvain, Erlin Wittig was there for everyone. Have I left anyone out? Oh, Linda Johnson. I do have you here, sorry. Linda Johnson. So these were, things didn't just spontaneously grow. These were people who love our town, who spent days and days putting this together. And then you heard about our magnificent sponsors, Chevron. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Chevron. Chevron's 6 years older than we are, and how fortunate are we to be founded really by such a fantastic company who still is so generous, not just to our city, but the whole region. Continental Development. Richard, you already know how I feel about you and your employees. Thank you again. Mattel, this is extraordinary. To everybody else, thank you so much on behalf of our city. I'm sorry. Oh, Jeff Kaysen, oh my goodness, yes, thank you, who is the mastermind behind the Centennial Celebration. I think many of us consider it the finest day in El Segundo's history. So look to see what the next 100 years is, but thank you, Jeff. You're a creative genius who came up with it and came to us and presented it, and you saw some of his work there, but thank you for a spectacular day in our city's history. Thank you. So,
I think if we could just invite any representatives from sponsors to come up and do one big picture, and then I can hand out the certificates afterwards.
Yes, thank you. And we didn't give a special shout out to the Chamber, who in addition to being volunteers were there with us every step of the way. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Linda.
Sponsors and committee members.
So, Mayor, while you're gathering, I do think we should take a moment to thank Meredith as well. It was truly a challenging year last year without the Centennial, and adding that to her workload was really quite a bit.
Hey. Uh-oh.
Wow. Okay. Actually, if we could get some of the folks here, that'd be great if the back row could step up on the little area back there. This will be the last one, guys. Great. And we can get folks to move in this way. Just move in this way. I'm going to try to go up from way up high as I can reach. So I should see your lovely faces. I'm going to try to go way up here and try to get everybody. Let's see. Craig, good. I see everybody. Don't hide. Don't hide from me. Hiding back there. Is that your husband hiding? He's hiding. He's hiding. No hiding. The camera sees all. All right, here we go. I think I can actually do this. Here we go. 1, 2, and a couple of photos here. Keep going here. Now we're having fun. All right. Excellent. Thanks, guys.
All right. Hello.
Hello.
How are you? Yes. Gotta find all these. Let me go in the back.
They're not going to stick around?
What are you doing Park Vista tonight?
Good to see you.
We have time to make up. We can make it up. What, coffee or tea or anything? Scotch? There's hot coffee. Go.
All right, so we're back. Once again, what a wonderful city. We spend the first 50 minutes celebrating the wonderful people who live, work, and play here. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Perstock.
Here.
Councilmember Brand.
Present.
Councilmember Dugan.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Boyles.
Here.
And Mayor Fuentes.
Here. Now is the time for public communications related to city business only, 5 minutes per person. Also, if you're here because of item number 1, there's no public hearing, so now is the time to speak on item number 1. How many people want to speak tonight?
Short-term rental.
Okay.
Short-term rental.
So how many people are going to speak tonight? Okay, very good, 5 minutes.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of City Council. I'm Gail Church. I live at 406 Virginia Street. And although I'm just 2 doors down from the infamous Airbnb party house, I've not come to share my personal tales of woe about that. I am generally opposed to government infringing on personal property rights of its citizens. There are, however, times such as this discussion of short-term rentals when the greater good must be considered. I took your online survey, which was flawed. It asked only whether short-term rentals should be allowed in El Segundo. It neglected to mention the various forms that might take. I voted yes because I believe it to be totally acceptable for people to rent rooms of their house. In fact, our municipal code already allows residents to rent 2 rooms of their home. It does not require additional parking, business licenses, taxes, nor does it require that these be long-term rentals. To me, it looks as though we already have provisions for short-term rentals rooms in people's homes. I think we should leave this policy as is It allows empty nesters or others with spare bedrooms to supplement their incomes, and it provides affordable housing for the renters. So with that said, I certainly hope that El Segundo doesn't become the first South Bay city to allow entire homes and accessory dwelling units to become short-term rentals. This is where the greater good comes in. There's a severe housing shortage in California, as we all hear all the time. And so far as I know, there is no shortage of hotel rooms. So, some of you I know opposed the state's dictates about ADUs. And it was their effort, of course, to create additional housing stock in the state. Even so, we're stuck with it. And I wonder, do we really want to then defeat the purpose of having these accessory dwelling units by turning them into hotel rooms as opposed to dwellings? Finally, I listened with great interest to the reports about other South Bay cities having a difficult time enforcing their bans on short-term rentals. So I have a question. How would it be easier to enforce business licenses? Most people are law-abiding citizens who would obey a ban if it existed. For those who are not, some code enforcement would be required, whether it was for enforcing the ban or the business licenses. Now, I'm blonde, so it's possible there's some flaw in my thinking, but I'd be interested in hearing about it during the council discussion of this matter.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Mona Eisman, 415 Concord Street. First, I want to thank the city, the last city council meeting, both the police and the planning commissioner. We have had really fruitful conversations to talk about this issue. But I think there are two issues. One is the problem house, which is now a celebrity house in the Beach Reporter. Okay? The second is the long-term vision of what we want for El Segundo. So I want to focus on the long-term vision. I have faith that now the city is engaged in helping solve the issue of one house. Not that that's easy, but we're all working together toward that end. So I'm pleased on that. But I want to look at the long-term vision. It concerns me if El Segundo is the only South Bay city that allows short-term rentals. We are not a large community. We don't have 100,000 homes. We have a few thousand homes, and we will lose the feeling of our community. I would love those homes to have families in them that have kids in our schools, that support our 100th birthday, that come to our parades, that really keep a feeling of community versus having us become a tourist destination. When El Segundo is advertised, they say near the beach, and they don't talk about us as a residential community as much as we will be the only beach city where it is legal. And so we will have more and more. I also am concerned about the corporations coming in to buy properties. There are several corporations that have lost in court in Santa Monica or going to court in other cities that are buying properties for the sole purpose of short-term rental. And so families will not be able to buy homes, will not be able to come into this city. Lastly, an R1 or R2 is zoning that is for residential. It is not for hotels. That's a commercial property, purely for commercial use. And if you have someone that is an investor that is only doing short-term rental, you're essentially putting a commercial property into a community, into an R1, R2 residential community where we will never know our neighbors, the comings and goings, all times of day and night. And again, it's not just noise, it's trash, it's security. There's so many issues, but it is a sense of community. We want to know our neighbors. So I do want us to look at those larger issues. I've been assured by the city we are looking at that in addition to the house party ordinance to help in the issue when it's a problem house. But I would like us to consider the larger question of what we want for our relatively small residential R1, R2 community. And who do we want to come by our houses? What do we want those houses to be used for? Do we want to support our community, our parades, our schools, or do we want to have tourists coming in and out? Yes, using some restaurants, but not using all the resources and being a contributing member to our community. Thank you.
My name is Gary Schmunk, and I live at 415 Concord Street. I also want to thank the planning department for what they've done so far, trying to control the situation of the house behind us. I have a couple of, still have some serious concerns as well, that basically renting this out and collecting bed taxes, it's a commercial entity in a residential zone, and it's a big concern. Part of the opposition to this is that if you have to if it's either approved or approved with stipulations that if it's denied or if it's approved with stipulations, how will we control that? And that's like saying, if we can't control people running stop signs, how are we going to do that? My other concern is that if this is approved and it goes really badly wrong, it's like opening Pandora's box. How are you going to shut that? The concern would be, what if investors have now purchased properties on the basis of making income on Airbnb or short-term rental income? They're going to be crying to the city saying, you can't stop this now because we have no way to pay for these properties, and you said before we could do it. So that would be another concern of mine. And the biggest issue is I feel like I have PTSD from the situation behind us. I never know the next time we're going to have a bad tenant in that property on any given day, any given night, weekend, whatever, what's going to happen back there. Those are my basic additional concerns to what I said in the prior meeting. Thank you.
My name is Jeff Shue. I live at 411 Concord. I just want to completely endorse what the previous three speakers have said. You're our city council. I think it's incumbent upon you to listen to what the residents are saying.
Seeing no more public communications, we will close council comments. This is an item on the agenda, so we can speak to it there. Procedural motion, consideration of a motion to read all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Thank you. C, unfinished business 1, consideration and possible action to receive and file an update regarding environmental assessment number EA 1180 and zone text amendment number ZTA 17-01 to allow short-term rentals through a short-term rental unit permit process in the city's residential zoning districts. The proposed project is categorically exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to 14 California Code Regulations 15301 as a Class 1 existing facilities, 15303 as Class 3 new construction or conversion of small structures, 15304 as a Class 4 minor alteration to land categorical exemptions, and as a Class 8 categorical goal exemption, since the amendment will assure the maintenance, restoration, enhancement, or protection of the environment where the regulatory process involves procedures for the protection of the environment. Fiscal impact, none with this action. City Manager?
Mayor and members of council, Sam Lee, our Director of Planning and Building Safety, and Lieutenant Kim from our police department have been working on this issue. This item was continued from last year to this specific date. Staff is not really looking for any action from the council tonight. If you wish to provide any input, that's great, but we wanted to provide a update on the current status of this issue. Sam, you want to come up and talk about where we currently are with the larger issue?
Yes. Madam Mayor, members of the council, this is a follow-up report from the meeting back from November 7th. At that meeting, we discussed possible options to regulate short-term rentals in our city. After much discussions about short-term rentals, discussion evolved into discussing about party houses, the problem with party houses. At that meeting, council directed staff to study the matter and report back on this date on January 16th. We don't have all the answers to this complicated matter at this time, but we wanted to provide you an update. Staff has formed a working group from the three departments, planning, finance, and police department, with the help of the city attorney's office. We met to discuss various different elements of the short-term rental, but also to a possible solution to deal with party houses. The group agreed that the short-term rental and the party house elements should be separated. The group also met with several of the concerned residents back in December. The residents acknowledged that some of the bad behavior related to party houses have decreased significantly. But they, nor do we, we're not sure if that's related to some of the city's actions that we've taken in the last few weeks and months, or if it's related to the time of the year. Winter is not a busy time for short-term rentals. The busy time actually happens in the summer. So with that, staff requests that additional time is needed to study and research short-term rentals and its impact to the community. So staff would like to bring this back later in the summer. In the meanwhile, though, staff would like to bring a new party house ordinance that would supplement our current loud party ordinance. We believe it would give us more tools to regulate unruly, unwanted problem houses. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sam. Council? No comments? Oh. Pardon? Oh, Lieutenant Kim's going to speak? Yes. Is he going to speak? Lieutenant Kim? Do you have questions for him?
We asked them to look at it, and they're asking for more time, so give them more time.
I concur. So, thank you, Sam. Thank you, Lieutenant Kim, all staff who's been involved in this, City Manager.
This would be renoticed for a public hearing when staff has all the information available. So there will be plenty of notice given to the public before this comes back.
Thank you, City Attorney. Okay, item number 2, consideration and possible action regarding receiving an update on possible alternatives to fund and/or decrease the cost of long-term capital improvements for Park Vista and provide direction to staff with regard to continuing to analyze the alternatives. Fiscal impact to be determined. City Manager.
Mayor, members of council, if you recall last year you received a presentation from the president of the Senior Housing Board that laid out the issues related to long-term capital improvements necessary at Park Vista Senior Housing Facility and the need to start addressing some of those long-term expenses and repairs. The board had identified some alternatives at that time. Council heard briefly what those alternatives were and directed staff to look into the matters further. So you'll hear tonight a report from the City Attorney's Office, our Finance Director, and from myself on the findings of our research to date. And why don't we, Mark, you're going to start.
Certainly. One of the issues that was brought up as a significant cost issue in dealing with the capital improvements was prevailing wage requirements under state law and the public contracting requirements under state law. Prevailing wage, depending on the kind of project is, drives costs up between 15 and 25% on the construction parts of the project. The public contracting process drives the costs up further. There's bonds required, a lot of different requirements that local government and actually all government agencies have to place on these kinds of contracts. You generally get fewer contractors, potentially, particularly when you're, depending on the type of project you're looking at, you may get fewer bidders. Bidders may be higher because of the type of bureaucracy involved and the increased contractual requirements as far as insurance and bonds and all those kind of things. And these two factors significantly drive up the cost of doing repairs on a facility like Park Vista. And so the question was raised by the chairperson as one of the significant questions is how does the facility avoid paying prevailing wage and dealing with the public works requirements? And it was briefly discussed at that meeting that one of the potential options, there are some exceptions to prevailing wage with regard to public projects, but they're very few and none of them apply to this facility. And it was brief, I believe I briefly raised at that meeting that one potential was to sell it to a nonprofit housing corporation that has experience, and there are a number of them, in operating these types of facilities, affordable housing projects, senior housing projects. And so an option is to turn this over or sell it for fair market value to a nonprofit entity to run Park Vista, and then nonprofit would operate it and would not have to deal with these prevailing wage requirements that the city has to deal with. Again, a key aspect of that is that it needs to be sold for fair market value. Now, the fair market value of a building like this that has restricted rents based upon affordability is going to have less market value than something that doesn't. Additionally, I believe it was Council Member or Mayor Pro Tem Boyles that asked a question about some of the additional requirements, because I think the rents on Park Vista currently for the existing residents, as I recall, I may have my numbers wrong, but I don't think so, as they were at about 38% of market for the existing tenants, but as new tenants came on, the rents would get increased up to about 50%. There was some interest in keeping those type of requirements in place, and those could be put in any sort of sales contract, and the purchaser would take those into account in determining what the fair market value is. So that is, and I've discussed this with a consultant that does a lot of work with non-profit housing entities and with public agencies in affordable housing, and they clearly believe this is an option that's viable. Doesn't mean the council wants to do it, but it is an option that's viable as far as a way to avoid or to keep it as a senior housing project, but to take it out of the realm of public contracting and prevailing wage. So that's my part of the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions for the city attorney?
We do have a couple more parts of the presentation. It's up to the council whether you want to wait until the end or. The other two alternatives that staff was asked to look at included converting the units that are studio apartments to one-bedrooms, which would be done by basically constructing a wall within the unit. I know that there were concerns raised about the desirability or livability of those units. City staff, planning and building department, and the fire department did look at the current plans for Park Vista and identified some issues that need further exploration. Chief among those really is the fact that bedrooms require windows or sliding glass doors. Depending on the location of the sliding glass door within the unit, some of the units likely aren't convertible to one bedrooms. There also needs to be an analysis done of the ventilation systems, disability access, and the electrical systems to determine whether or not the units could be converted from studio apartments to one-bedrooms. We've estimated a cost that it's advisable to have some analysis done by a design professional who could look at the feasibility and identify the projected costs of the conversions versus the additional rental income. We feel that if council wants to go in this direction, we should bring a design professional on board, and those costs are estimated about $5,000. The second alternative that was identified was the potential construction of additional units on the current parking lot. So the Park Vista building has a partial parking garage, and then there's a surface parking lot that's adjacent to Recreation Park that I believe has about 16 parking spaces. And the concept there was to replace those 16 parking spaces, potentially underground, and to build additional units on that property. That is a very complex and complicated project. And it does raise the question, can you replace that parking and still build a viable apartment building above it? Staff's recommendation, if council wants to pursue that, is that we bring an architect on board to prepare do some initial feasibility analysis. And once an architect has identified a potential project and the potential costs, that we bring a financial advisor on board to assess the deal. Can this pencil out? Does it work? What would it cost to build these units? What would the period of return be for that development? And then there's the question of who actually pays for the development in the first place. This has been a useful conversation in that it's really forced staff to look at Park Vista, the capital improvement needs, and the financials of Park Vista. As a matter of fact, the next year's Park Vista budget is on the consent calendar tonight, and you'll see that as part of that item, Park Vista is now making a profit. So I did ask Joe Lilio, our finance director, to work with Neil Cadman and the management company to look at the budget, to look at the expenses and the revenues, and I asked Joe to make a presentation tonight on what we think another option is, either instead of one of these options or in conjunction with one of these options as far as funding the long-term capital needs of the facility. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe at this point.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. So this is a very high-level presentation. It'll be brief. Some of the key points that were observed in the reserve report for Park Vista. The report identifies a fully funded 100% reserve balance of about $3.2 million. And that reserve report is attached to your staff report. If you go to page 2.7 on that report, that's where these numbers are. Currently funded, so the reserve is currently funded at 49.3%, or about $1.6 million. That's the money that's in the bank right now. A healthy reserve is anywhere from 70 to 100%. The deficiency in the reserves are about $1.6 million, and again, that's at 100% funded. Per the report, the recommended reserve contribution for 2018 is $324,000, with an escalation in subsequent years. And again, the well-funded reserve is between 70 and 100% funded. Some of the staff analysis on the annual budget, which you will see later. It's another staff item coming to you. The projected net income for 2018 is going to be $190,000. So that's after all revenues and expenditures are netted out. This $190,000 is currently not projected in the reserve policy, so it's not captured in any of the numbers that you see. Staff is recommending that City Council possibly establish a reserve policy for Park Vista that addresses applying annual excess income towards capital replacement reserves. So right now there is no policies at all guiding how excess income is captured. So it's just put into the bank. But we're recommending that some policy be applied to address the funding the reserves. The recommended reserve contribution, again, for 2018 per the report was $324,000. After reviewing the report, I'm of the opinion that there are steps that can be taken to mitigate some of the reserve and capital funding pressures, and some of the items that we can be looking at is establishing reserve policies on operating and capital replacement reserves, establishing a goal to be within the well-funded range of the reserves. Again, that's 70% plus, and a reasonable amount would be 75 to 80%. City staff to evaluate the timeline of the capital project schedule. Also conduct a third-party engineering report on the recommendations. So if City Council is inclined to take these recommendations from staff, we would reevaluate the reserve study and incorporate the staff recommendations that's directed by City Council, and come back and report out on how those recommendations mitigated the physical health of Park Vista reserves and any revised recommendations and outcomes. That concludes my report. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Joe. Council, questions?
I have a couple observations and a question. Can you hear me out there? No? Hello? Yeah, you can. Okay, Greg says no. First question is, assuming, maybe you haven't gotten this far, Joe, but assuming we set aside the required reserves, budget for that, what's the cash difference that we're looking at for the next, 5 years?
I didn't catch the last part, what you said, Drew.
We have a budget that says we're $190,000 short, right? We're $190,000 short on the budget for 2018. I mean, in surplus, sorry, profit or gains.
Yes.
Mostly because of the loan that we decided we forgave or whatever. It wasn't required. If we're going to set aside the money for the reserves, what does that financial picture look like over the next 5 years?
So that would need to be incorporated into this reserve study. But if you just took, the recommended reserve contribution to $324,000 is what's being recommended. Again, that's funded at 100%. And you applied the 190, there's still a slight shortfall.
Now, you do that in year one, then what would you do for years 2, 3, 4, 5? You're setting aside funds then too, right? I guess I would like to see it, because I know this information came later, but I would like to see a more complete picture of the financing with the reserve set aside before we even make a decision here, because to me, a buyer would get the benefit of about 30 to 50% savings on the prevailing wage, which is your second biggest line item outside of the management fees. Right? So that would help the valuation of the property, probably. Greg, you don't? Okay. And then I would like to hear from, since Neil's here, Neil Cadman representing the Cadman Group that manages it, I'd love to just get a general sense of what kind of valuations we're looking at like that for a property, or maybe Mark, you can speak to that given your experience with the client. But I mean, I think about, we have limited funds available, we have all these capital improvement projects in the future, and we're talking about essentially setting aside more money for a project that we could probably get the same benefit for these people through the nonprofit if we have the covenants in place. I guess that's what I'm questioning, is why continue to operate this and set aside the capital if we can get the same covenants in place with the buyer and they have to maintain that? I don't see the benefit. Continuing to operate, it takes time and effort and energy away from the staff, Rexham Park, and again, that capital could be deployed somewhere else within the city. So I'm just questioning, but I would like to see a clearer financial picture, what it looks like with the reserves set aside, how long that would, what that does to the cash flow, and maybe net present value on that cash flow, I think. But maybe if Mark or Neil, if you guys could talk about what a potential valuation could look like.
Well, I can answer part of your question. And as far as the transfer of the asset, I've been involved in those transactions, and they're not uncommon. Redevelopment agencies, the city's never had one, but in cities that do have redevelopment agencies, they were required to take 25% of, I'll call it the profit, but it was the additional property, increment that they received in purchase affordable housing. And those cities didn't necessarily want to be in the business of operating affordable housing, and so it wasn't unusual for them to sell off those housing units, and there's a market out there for it. And there are also tax credits involved in this process. And the person I've spoken to about this thinks that, I mean, in her opinion, that these nonprofits do a very good job of operating these units. I personally am in a city that has a lot of affordable units operated by nonprofits, and they seem to be well run. The city doesn't get complaints about them. Was recently involved in a transaction selling units by a city to a nonprofit, and seems to be going very smoothly. As far as the exact valuation of this property, I can't tell you that. Your question about the covenants, yes, we can put them in there and restrict the rents. The nonprofit would want that anyway. That's what part of what they do as far as the affordable housing, and then really put it out on the for a number of these nonprofits to come in and bid on. They'll assess the building, the amount of upkeep necessary, projects that need to be done to the building, and they'll make a fair market value bid based upon all those components. I don't know what that number is at this point in time, and as in the staff report, part of that process, I'd recommend we bring in a consultant to help us out coming up with and that consultant could come up with the estimates about the valuation and assist us in the whole process, which on the financial end of it.
Could we ask Neil to? Thanks, Suzanne. Could we ask Neil to speak as the manager representing the building? I'd just like to get your sense of what, Neil, that would look like potentially, or if you have experience with that. Please.
Thanks, Drew. First off, just to make it clear, I'm not part of the board, Park Vista, so I don't speak on behalf of the board. So it's more like just the management company's opinion if I express anything to that. I can't give you value of the property. And as a licensed commercial real estate broker, I was sat here doing the numbers, and they're rather astronomical numbers in terms of what that property's value would be from a cost per unit basis. But from a cap rate, that's what's going to get affected, of course, by the revenue. I have opinions as to some of the processes or some of the ideas that the board's come up with, staff, to review. I've been sort of living these numbers, and it was a great conversation with Joe the other day, because I've been living these numbers, and I'm the one who created this budget that was approved by the board and now is in front of you tonight. And in the 12 years now that we've been managing the facility, we took over a facility that was upside down. And through some creative processes from some previous board members and the city itself, it's nice to see that this is now a facility. It's a public, unlike some other public facilities, this is a public facility that actually generates money and pays for itself. So I'm very proud to be a member of the city that has this type of facility that does that and also provides this affordable housing component. I think one of my concerns as sort of a resident is, Park Vista has these restrictions on residency, and one of those restrictions is being a resident of the city of El Segundo for a period of time. Now, those of us who operate in multifamily industry on the private side, we see that as something that could never be done. When we use the word discrimination, that's a bad word, but we can say that you can limit to affordability, you can limit to age, but limiting to residency is something that I think is a tricky slope, and I have no experience in that, so I'm sure that, Mark, you'll have a lot more than that. But again, going back to these numbers, as Joe and I talked, the reason why this all came about was essentially two reasons. One is that we replaced the roof at Park Vista about 3 years ago, And this is one of those sort of shocks that a guy like me who normally works in the private sector finds out that we obtained 3 bids to replace the roof, and our highest bid was $140,000. And the roof that's on Park Vista now is about $390,000 done through the public works process. And I understand exactly why that was. There wasn't any wastefulness, wasn't anything wrong happened. That's just the process that happens. And this conversation right now is because the facility is now 30 years old, and we have 30-year-old pipes. And the board asked us as management company to analyze how much money we've been spending over the past 2 years on plumbing leaks. And it's about $60,000 if you take into account the actual leaks and repairs, drywall repairs. We've had to put some residents up in hotels for a period of time while we did the repairs in their units, and also we had a little bit of mold remediation that we had to take care of. I think the board actually thought that it was going to be a much higher dollar amount than that, because on a building that's about 96 units in that size and that age, that's not such a horrible number in terms of some capital improvements. The reason, again, that why I think this conversation is happening, because if I go out and bid, and I've been authorized to look at trying to find a consultant who can analyze the plumbing to see what the age of that plumbing is. We're concerned that if I go bid to replumb that building, I'll get a number like this, and the number on a public works basis might go heavily into those cash reserves that are already at the facility right now. So from what I take from our previous meetings, the board, Jim Latta and Marty Stone and the other members, are sending the city a message that says, hey, look, if we have to do capital expenditures on Park Vista to keep it as a viable building, just keep in mind that those cash reserves may go very quickly. If we have to spend that kind of money, is there any way around having to spend that kind of money in order to replumb the building, or to rebuild balconies, or to put in new windows, those types of things? I don't know if I've made this much more difficult for you or not.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
The residency requirement.
Yes.
I mean, are there any complications with that?
Yes, it is a complicated issue. It does raise legal issues.
So I guess maybe it sounds like, Joe, you're going to come back to us with a 4 or 5 year pro forma that talks about what, shows what's going to happen with the reserve requirements as well, so we can get to cash flow and net present value of that cash flow. I would like to see what the options are if we can simulate the same arrangement that we already have with less exposure to the city. I'd like to at least explore what that looks like, how I feel about it. What's nice about this is that these ideas, I think it was touched on earlier, but I'm going to reiterate, these came from the board. Jim Latta and the board brought these forward. These were not city council. These bubbled up because they realized they had a problem, to Mr. Cadman's point.
I'll take credit or blame with regard to the sale issue. I was asked, how do we get around the prevailing wage, public contracting, and that's the way it can be done.
I have a question. If the city did sell this facility, where would the funds go?
We were talking about that today. I think they would likely, it would be a council's decision. Likely go back in the general fund.
Okay. They didn't come from a special fund. They came from a time when the city had
reserves,
ample funds, and they
Correct.
could do something like this.
Correct.
So
I believe, based upon the passage of time, those funds were restricted a long time ago, but based upon the passage of time and the useful life of that building, that at this point, I don't think that there'd be any legal restriction on those funds. Council ultimately decides how funds get spent.
So I have a question on some of the numbers that were presented here. You had a fully funded reserve of roughly $3.25 million. What does that represent? What does that number really represent?
correct us if we're wrong, but the 3.2 represents what the capital study identified as the future need over some period of time?
Yes, it was the need over a period of time, but the reserve study was also told to keep in mind prevailing wage type of contracts. So that is a number that is, and it's an estimate, of course, because we simply don't know what those numbers are, but that's how they were instructed to produce that reserve study.
Can you remind us the period of time was 20 years, 15?
No, I believe that it was 2022 or 2024 anticipated that those numbers would need to be.
And then who controls the reserves?
Well, the board comes forward with recommendations about how to expend the funds, but the council has to approve all expenditures. There's some, I don't know if it's 5 or 10,000, there's some amount the board can spend without your authority.
And in your report kind of said we're about halfway funded on that, 3 1/4?
Correct. So about 49.3%. This wasn't prepared by city staff. This was prepared by Mr. Cadman. If you go to page 2-11 on that report, it has detailed amounts of the fully funded amount. It fluctuates year to year.
Yeah. So I guess I have a concern that, that we look at a building that's in 30, 40 years old or whatever it is there, and people are condemning the plumbing in it and wanting to replumb the entire building. I'm not so sure that I agree with that. My house is older than that, and I'm not condemning the plumbing in it. So it's easy to generate this reserve number that says, hey, these are the things that you're going to have to replace over time. The amount of monies that are consumed in the repair of plumbing issues right now, I don't know how much of that is labor and materials and how much of that is rent at hotels in town, but it'd be nice to understand that a little more clearly. Concerns are that, it's easy to generate these numbers and put together hey, we need to have these reserves on hand. I guess the question is, do you really consume those reserves if you have a way to manage your, mitigate your risks a little bit differently? Are there smart things you can do from inspection? Are there smart things you can do from other entities as far as to limit your exposure to those potential, I guess, replacements of capital here? So I don't know how we would get if there is such a thing as a certified reserve amount. I don't know how that would come to be, but would that be part of a building sale process, or somebody throws $1 million, $3 1/4 million out there and says that's how much we need in reserves, and I say, okay, why not 6.5? Why not double it or whatever? I'm just being facetious now, but I don't know what that stands behind. I hear it's the estimate of things, but
well, staff's recommendation was that we take a look at some different assumptions, which I think you're also saying, Mike, as far as can we extend the lifespan of some of these building elements? Can we extend the construction phase so that $3.2 million isn't being spent as quickly? And can we assume, instead of a 100% funding need, that we assume that the need is more like 75%? And then factor in some assumptions around the facility continuing to generate revenue and those revenues being placed into the capital fund. And we believe that if you use those assumptions, this $3.2 million need gets much smaller.
It would be my desire, hopefully also my expectation that would occur, but I don't want to make decisions based on that kind of a number out there in front of me right now, is what I'm saying. I'd like to see something more realistic.
Okay. So we can work with the consultant who prepared the reserve study to prepare an alternative set of analysis that uses some different assumptions and bring this item back. that sounds like probably the next logical step, unless there is a desire of the council to go in a totally different direction, which is to look at options around development or the option around looking into the sale of the property.
Why wouldn't we explore all at the same time?
Yeah.
I mean, we have to look at all options
Yeah,
concurrently.
I agree.
I mean, it's interesting, Mike. I was looking through the schedule. I mean, there's $2 million, over $2 million slated for kitchen and bathroom remodels within 7 years. So, I mean, I don't know what drove that assessment in here, but there are some significant capital requirements in the next few years. And so I'd prefer we look at all options at the same time. There's no point in looking at one or two. Just look at all three, however many there are.
Okay. Gremlins. So I would make a comment to Mike's statement about the plumbing, and you live in a 30-year-old house, but the demands on a building like this are different than a single-family resident. My former employer, as its buildings were reaching 45 and 50 years old, they had burst pipes often, weekly, lots of damage, lots of repairs, and moving people around offices, which is not as complicated as moving people around living units and into hotels, like Neil said. So I think it's on the horizon.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say, of anybody at the table, I think I know more about pipe than anybody here.
Maybe
I'm going to
not.
go out on a limb here. And commercial versus, and this is a residential property when it comes down to it. So these are not exposed piping that's out in the elements. This is stuff that's in the walls. It's copper. It's done in the 80s. It's pretty damn good. So there's going to be some issues in there, and unless there's some material issues that I'm not aware of. But to have a wholesale description of we need to replumb the building because we've had some leaks is not something that I can accept on face value. I need a little more behind that. That's just where I'm coming from. But I don't.
One of the, well,
Mark, can I comment on one thing real quick?
I'm
What
sorry,
Mike
yes.
said? No apologies. Just want to, timing's appropriate here. The plumbing, it looks like, Mike, isn't even in the schedule until 2021.
It's part of the $3.25 million, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a significant amount. Now, I think another question would be if there's these plans to go forward and build a new units on top of the parking lot. Who's going to pay for that? How are we going to pay for that? That's I don't want to engage in any kind of design work until we figure out how we're going to pay for something like that. So I don't know.
It sounds like, though, Mike, if we did decide to go for the sale option, that would be irrelevant at that point anyway, right? That would be at the discretion of the purchaser, probably.
Yeah. That's why I liked your point about let's chase a couple of these paths in parallel here, not in series. So
I was just going to add that there's been problems at the building. I mean, your house wasn't built by the lowest responsible bidder, which probably helps.
well, I know who built it, and I may challenge that one.
Oh, okay. Well, but in any event, there have been problems at the structure, things that were constructed the wrong way. Just
understood.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been more problems at that building that there should be than there should be for a building of that age.
But there's ways to inspect that to determine what the life expectancy is and what the remaining life is, and it's scientific and it's easy to it's not subjective, it's objective. So
and I wasn't disagreeing. I was just providing a little background, and through the years there's been replacement and fixing of things that are unusual.
So if we go ahead and explore these three options, are we going to have to approve funding for some of the professional people that you were talking about, or is that under your?
Well, if I'm reading the council correctly, it sounds like you want us to do two things, and tell me if there are more than two things, but one would be to look at sale option, so we could bring a consultant on board to do some preliminary reconnaissance and conceptualization of what the value of the property is, whether there's interest out in the development community or in the property ownership community and senior housing management community and taking on this project. And we could also look at some different assumptions as an alternative to the reserve study to sort of gauge what another answer to the current problem may look like. I don't think staff's recommending that we pursue the development option, the construction of additional units on the parking lot option at this time.
Correct, but I thought you were talking about bringing in somebody to look at, say, the parking lot and what would be involved to develop that into something with below-level parking and units.
If council wanted to pursue that option, then we would bring somebody on board. It sounds like there's more interest, certainly an easier process, I think, to look at the sale option or a different approach to funding the capital fund if we want to continue owning the property.
And a range of capital funding with a probability with it would be nice. That's other than just a number that's thrown out there. So
that would. Okay, I thought you wanted to pursue them all. Okay.
And we think we can accomplish the reconnaissance of the sale option within my spending authority.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is 8:42. We are going to break and be back at 10 minutes to 9.
She just blew you out of the water.
in the house. We are back. Okay, item D3, consideration and possible action to receive and file a status update of the Lakes Task Force. The task force is working on developing a request for proposals for potential uses of the Lakes Golf Course and driving range. Fiscal impact none. And I see our Director of Recreation and Parks there, Meredith Pettit.
Yes, thank you very much. So in front of you, you have a report in your packet indicating the status update of the Lakes Task Force. As it writes, the task force was created in November. Since then, the task force has met twice, once in December, once in January. And the main things that they've been focusing so far on are the golf course background, reviewing the financial history. We've reviewed some sample RFPs and the current management contract, really just to get everybody up to speed on the background information that they need to successfully complete this task. There are 3 things currently in progress. One is a facility assessment. The task force members felt it was really important to identify the current condition of the course, the driving range, and the clubhouse building so that the RFP could potentially indicate what minimum requirements the city would want of a new partner or operator. If the city is going to be requiring capital investment, then the city should have a good idea and be able to identify what specific capital improvements are needed. The second thing in progress is a community survey. We have drafted the community survey. The task force members have taken the survey as just to provide feedback and on the flow and on the content of the survey, and that survey will be open to the public starting tomorrow. They wanted this community survey to identify any unmet park and recreation facility needs. So specifically about this property, when we're talking about opening it up to alternative uses that are still within the deed restriction of outdoor public recreation, they really felt that it was important to receive feedback from the community to really see what unmet needs might be out there. And then also, we are reviewing proposals from consulting services that would be able to assist with the RFP process. So I have received 3 proposals from differing consultants, and I will be reviewing those with the city manager to determine if we want to proceed moving forward utilizing those services. Tonight, the task force wanted to update you on what they've been focusing on, what's currently in progress, and also what the timeline looks like moving forward. This is definitely a group of dedicated individuals who want to do this process right, and they want to do a thorough, comprehensive job. They've indicated that we are working on the development of drafting the RFP, but those things that I mentioned are what they're focusing on, receiving that information in order to complete that process. So right now, our target for getting a draft RFP back to City Council for review is February 20th. The way that differs from the initial timeline is a 2-week difference. Initially, we had targeted February 6th to come to City Council with a draft RFP. And the initial timeline indicated an April 17th date of a recommendation of a new operator or a new agreement. And that timeline, the end timeline, is still doable because in the initial timeline we had a little over 6 weeks when the RFPs were basically on the street. So I think there's a little bit of room there to make up as well as in the evaluation period, but we're still targeting that date. But I did want to update you that the draft RFP will most likely be the second meeting of February. There are, I think, 4 members of the task force here tonight. If the council has any questions for the task force or myself.
I have a question about a consultant for the RFP. I thought we had that conversation before and decided we weren't going to go the consultant route. I'm fine with it. I believe I requested one, but was told that we had the capabilities in-house to do that.
I think given the complexity of, when we open it up to alternative uses, not just specifically golf course, it adds another layer of complexity to it. And the conversations that we're having at the task force, their recommendation is to utilize consulting services, particularly with somebody who has experience in writing golf-related RFPs. So that is something that they have recommended for staff to look into.
So you've reached out, sorry, did you say to 3?
Yes.
And when are they responding?
I received the 3rd one today.
Okay, and you're going to down select when or choose?
This week I'll have a conversation with Greg and review those. Our next task force meeting is January 29th, so I still have to discuss that if we want to wait till then to select or somehow do that before that.
Well, no, I'd like this process to move along since we're already 2 weeks to the right.
So you're not going to meet on the 11th?
We did not meet on the 11th.
Not meet on the 11th, I mean. Okay. Can you give us an email that reminds us who's on this task force?
Sure.
I can't remember who's on it from last year.
And the members who are here tonight, I see John Goot, Lily Craig. Who else is?
Lee Davis is here.
Lee Davis and
Al
Kiahi. Thank you.
I just had a question. So with the whole RFP process, I know originally we had talked about some short-term and then long-term opportunities. Are we moving forward with any short-term opportunities for improvement on the golf course, or are we putting everything on hold? Like, what is the status with the short-term opportunities?
So some of the short-term opportunities that I'm working directly with the management company and through the golf course subcommittee are fee recommendations, which will be in front of City Council in February. They're going in front of Recreation and Parks Commission tomorrow night.
Okay.
And also evaluating the contracts that are in place with the independent contractors and the other contractors that use the facility right now. We're also going to be assisting with some of the general sort of immediate maintenance needs as far as interior painting and some other aesthetic
plumbing
pick-me-ups.
Yes, that's one of those older buildings with failing plumbing, Mike.
And then are we looking at the joint use with Manhattan Beach Unified?
Well, that's part of the golf course manual review that the golf course subcommittee will be doing.
Okay.
And the item on tomorrow's Recreation and Parks Commission, are those proposed increases?
Yes, they are.
And who came up with those?
Through the management company, myself, and then they were presented to the golf course subcommittee, and they were approved.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's encouraging. Oh. Okay, well, I still, as you know, am anxious to move things into the left and not have things roll out to the right on a schedule.
Sure. Do our best.
Mike, Carol.
Thank you, Meredith.
Yeah, to everybody on the committee, thank you. I'm sure you would like to get things rolling as well and not have it drag out. So, thank you. Item 4. Yes. Consideration and possible action to announce the appointments to the Technology Committee. Fiscal impact, none. And previously we held interviews with candidates for the Technology Committee. The depth and breadth of experience in technology in El Segundo is phenomenal, and we are appointing Chad Hahn to a partial term expiring June 30th, 2019. So thank you, Chad, for your willingness to serve, and thank you to all the other members of the Technology Committee. Consent agenda, any pulls?
One, it's related to, bless you. Not item number 1, sorry.
No, it's not
one
one,
item. Sorry, it's related to Liebert Casket, our attorney.
Oh, it's the last one, I think.
Item
Yeah,
15.
Any other polls? Do I have a motion to approve items 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14?
So move. Oh, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, 5-0. Mayor Pro Tem, you pulled item 15.
Item 15, consideration and possible action for the council to amend the city's agreement with Liebert, Cassidy and Whitmore to increase the hourly rate for legal services related to labor and personnel matters. Fiscal impact estimated $10,000 to $14,000 annually. The reason I pulled it is we just spent a lot of time talking about the fees of our in-house counsel, not in-house, but contracted counsel, general counsel, city attorney. Spent a lot of time. He hadn't had an increase in, I think it was 8 years, if I remember correctly. And we did a bunch of rigorous analysis to compare his fees to other cities. And while here we have an increase. I know it's not a huge amount. We're increasing $10,000 to $14,000 more annually. But I don't have any information on when they last got an increase and why they deserve it. So I'm just looking for that clarification.
Sorry, I thought it was in the staff report.
The last got an increase 2008. Yeah, right there. So, third.
Yeah, I didn't see a staff report in my binder. Maybe I missed it, but.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, they last received an increase in 2008. Their rate currently is $260 per hour. This would take it to $280 per hour, which represents 7.5% rate increase over that time period, which is about 0.75% per year. The estimate of how much per year, I took a 3-year average, and one of those years was abnormally high, but still it was within the 3-year period. If you took the normal years, it was more like $10,000 a year average increase, but doing a straight 3-year was $14,000. My expectation would be closer to the $10,000, just because the 1 year was pretty abnormal. They've been providing the city with legal services for about 15 years. My interaction with staff and my interaction with them has been very positive through those years. They've been, they have a very good working knowledge of our personnel ordinances, personnel regulations, personnel rules, our union agreements, and so that's very helpful. Their managing partners actually are our lead contact and has been through the years. And as part of when the city council was looking at labor negotiators, and we were getting proposals, and I was talking to their firms even for their rates that they initially wanted for labor negotiations were well into $300 per hour. We negotiated that down, but on their other hourly rates, as I was talking to them and looking at proposals, they were averaging about $350 per hour for these kind of personnel and labor services, so they're substantially higher than what Liebert Cassidy is proposing this increase. So I did do a bit of a market study at that time, if you will, by talking to several firms. They've been very helpful in the last couple of years in dealing with some very critical PERS issues that the city was facing, and helped to resolve those in a very positive way. Again, I think there's the history and their knowledge of working with the city is very important. And I looked at the increases being relatively, I thought it was actually very reasonable, and again kept them what I thought was well below the average of other firms in their caliber.
Thank you.
I move approval of the item, requested increase.
I'll second.
Favor? Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you. No new business. Report, City Manager.
Mayor, members of council, it's my pleasure. Charles, if you could step forward to the microphone to introduce Charles Mallory to the council and to the community. Charles is our first ever Director of Information Services. And as is reflected in our strategic plan, and our strategic plan goals are building up our technology infrastructure is extremely important. Charles is going to lead this effort for us. He brings us 20 years of experience in the technology field. We were able to convince him to come from the Port of Long Beach, and even though it's a department of the City of Long Beach, the port basically operates like a city. It has all of the same responsibilities as a city. It's a very large, complex operation. Charles was there for 10 years. Prior to that, he was the Information Services Director at Cal State Los Angeles, and he has private experience as well, having spent 7 years with AMR, Ambulance Services, and building their technology. He's a graduate of Azusa Pacific University, although after I hired him, I learned that he may be the only IT director that I know that played 2 years of Division I football in the Big Ten.
Oh. So Hoosiers.
Charles comes very highly recommended. As you'll learn, he's very easy to talk to, very good communicator, and we're happy to have him. So Charles, welcome to Long Beach, or El Segundo, rather, and goodbye, Long Beach. Welcome to El Segundo.
I didn't know him when you were in Long Beach.
No, he
exactly.
didn't.
No, I did not know him in Long Beach.
So, if you want to say a few words to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to say hello and thank you for having me here, Madam Mayor Fuentes and Pro Temp Boyer, and City Council. I am very pleased to be here. This is a place that I want to be. It's a place that I think that there's a lot of opportunity with respect to some of the projects and the list of projects that you actually have on your plate, and I'm very excited. I've many of those projects, I have seen the list, I have done them, executed them on multiple occasions, multiple organizations, so I'm really pleased to be here. And, I am at your beck and call. So I will continue to work with Greg, the city manager, and do the best that I possibly can in with respect to making El Segundo a better place than it already is.
Well, thank you. We're so happy that you chose us, and Greg chose you, and I know that you know how happy we are, because when we had the opportunity to meet you a couple weeks ago, we were very enthusiastic.
Yes.
So we're glad you're here, and I would love for council to take a picture with you. I don't know if Robert is still in the house, but we'll get a picture with one of our phones. Meredith,
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I know that list is quite long.
I keep hearing that, right? I keep hearing that. Thank you. Thank you.
Centennial duties are She's still in.
Thank you.
That's because it was turned off. I just turned it on.
Is that, thank you, city manager. City attorney.
I'll pass tonight. I was going to have a report ready on the new bills and legislation, but I will bring that to you at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. City clerk.
I just want to remind everybody the nomination period closes tomorrow at 5 p.m. Got a full update.
Thank you. Our city treasurer is not here this evening. Council members, Councilmember Brand.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to wish everyone out there and watching a Happy New Year. 2018 will be 101 years old this Thursday. for closing in on it. And also want to make a report, which I haven't for maybe half a year now, on the consecutive day walk streak. It is still alive. And as of today, we reached 565 straight days without a miss. So encourage everybody out there to promote good health, to do something as simple as taking a half-hour walk every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Brand. Councilmember Perstuck?
I also want to wish everybody a Happy New Year. I also want to let everyone know about the upcoming Battle of the Badges competition between the fire and the police department, which will take place on March 4th, Sunday, March 4th, from 3 to 7 at the new Lakers facility. So please be on the lookout for that announcement and get your tickets to watch the battle. Last year, I believe the police took the fire department, so the fire department's been working really hard to ensure that they win this year.
Thank you. Councilmember Dugan? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Boyles?
Real quick, just want to point out that I saw a resident and friend walking out of City Hall. Just said, "Hey, how you doing? How was your experience at City Hall?" Said it was great. And so this is a good story. Her husband dropped her wallet. Street sweeper picked it up, found the wallet, turned it into City Hall. City Hall called right away, located them, and called and got the wallet, and everything was intact, nothing missing. So it's great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Let's see. Again, Happy New Year's, and I understand there's another celebration tomorrow, Mayor Pro Tem Boyle's birthday, so happy birthday. We could sing or we could not sing, your choice.
I'll have mariachi singing to me tomorrow, so it'll be fine.
All right. Let's see, since we last met, I've attended sanitation district meetings, vector control meetings. I had a very cool tour of the cross-campus Starburst Accelerator facility. I know we'll all be invited to go to that. Very exciting that cross-campus is coming to El Segundo. I think most of us attended a ribbon cutting for Booz Allen Hamilton in El Segundo. Very exciting that they chose our city to have their headquarters, or at least a prominent attendance here. Let's see. I attended the South Bay City Council's transportation meetings and steering committee meetings, and also meetings for the South Bay Aerospace Alliance. And we were talking about the centennial year, and I may not have thanked Meredith enough. Meredith and her staff, who have been involved in this for 2 years, and the happiest people in El Segundo now are the Recreation and Parks staff members, because it's all over, but what a year. Just really, thank you, Meredith. Fantastic year. So, yes.
I forgot to mention that Dick Croxall, long-term resident, and Carl Jacobson, former mayor, and I we're part of the LAX Airport Advisory Council. And I just want to assure everyone that we hear the concerns about the noise, the uptick in noise. We were concerned to see a graph that demonstrates the noise is definitely increasing, the frequency and the volume. And we are ensuring that our voice is heard. And we talked about that actually in closed session as well today. So I just want to make sure, please keep the comments coming. And Suzanne, you probably know better than anyone, there's a specific phone number and website for that. I don't have it handy. Do you happen to know that?
I think it's on our website.
It's on the city's website, so please, on the main page, right? On the home page. Oh, I died again. On the home page, if you have a noise complaint, please call it in. Thank you.
Yes, and I continue to meet with LAX often, as I know you do too. So, let's see, back to public communications. See, no public communications tonight. We end at the memorial. Frank V. Meehan of Redding, California, passed away of natural causes in the comfort of his home and in the presence of his family members on Thursday, November 23, 2017. He will be remembered as a loving husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. Frank's career in law enforcement spanned 35 years. His contributions to police work and his impact on the communities he served will not be forgotten. His family and friends have been inspired by Frank's many accomplishments. He had extensive knowledge about every subject, from history to photography, politics to botany, and seemingly everything in between. Everyone who knew him well will remember his strong leadership style and cherish their memories of his sense of humor and incredible generosity. Frank was the oldest of 4 boys born in Los Angeles to Francis and Nora Meehan on February 12, 1928. After graduating from Franklin High School, he enlisted in the United States Army, where he served in Kyoto as part of the occupational force. Not long after being discharged, he proposed to and married his best friend's little sister, Marie Keith, in 1949. Over the years, Frank built up an impressive resume with a long list of accolades. He spent 10 years working up the ranks in the West Covina Police Department. He became chief of Chino in 1967. He earned a Master's of Public Administration from the University of Southern California. In 1975, he was hired as police chief in Redondo Beach. As chief of police, he started the first interagency police burglary task force and a multi-agency drug task force, which remains in operation today. He created the first beach patrol and was named National We Tip Police Chief of the Year in 1982. After numerous accomplishments in West Covina, Chino, and Redondo Beach, he moved on to work for the LA District Attorney. He was then called by the FEMA director under President Ronald Reagan to serve as National Training Coordinator in Emmitsburg, Maryland. After 4 years, he returned to California, where he was recruited by the city of El Segundo to be police chief and later city manager. In 1993, he retired to the natural beauty of Redding, California, with his wife, Marie. Frank is survived by Marie, his wife of 68 years, brother Don living in Arcadia, sons Sean and Joe of Southern California, daughter Lisa living in North Carolina, grandchildren Christopher, Ariana, Delora, and Joshua, great-grandson Andrew Lane Carter, and great-granddaughter Sophie Hill, due January 2018. In lieu of flowers, the family requests donations be made to St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital in the name of Frank V. Meehan.